There is something nobody tells you about kindness. Not the kind that flows naturally from genuine love, but the kind you perform out of fear. The kind you offer even when you have nothing left. The kind you give to people who have never once asked how you are doing. The kind that has become so automatic you no longer remember choosing it. That kind of kindness is not a virtue. According to Carl Jung, it is a symptom. And it is slowly destroying you. You have been kind your entire life. Not because someone taught you to be kind, but because you learned early that kindness kept you safe. That if you were warm enough, accommodating enough, understanding enough, people would not hurt you. That if you gave before they could take, the taking would feel less violent. That if you made yourself useful enough, lovable enough, easy enough, you would finally earn the love that was always just out of reach. This is the brutality Jung pointed to. Not that kindness itself is wrong, but that for most empaths, kindness has nothing to do with generosity. It has everything to do with fear. You have felt this fear. The anxiety that rises when you consider saying no. The guilt that floods through you when you choose yourself over someone else. The panic that sets in when you think about disappointing someone. The shame that arrives when you feel anything other than understanding and compassion toward people who have hurt you repeatedly. This fear is not kindness. But it looks like kindness. It performs kindness perfectly. And for your entire life, people have praised you for it. Told you what a good person you are. What a generous soul. What a rare and beautiful human being. What they have not told you is that your kindness is costing you your life. Jung understood that the persona, the mask we present to the world, becomes dangerous when we confuse it with who we actually are. The empath who has built their entire identity around being kind has confused their mask with their face. They have become so identified with the performance of kindness that they have lost touch with everything else they feel. The anger they swallowed instead of expressing because anger is not kind. The needs they suppressed instead of voicing because having needs feels unkind. The boundaries they failed to set because boundaries feel like the opposite of kindness. The truth they withheld because honesty sometimes hurts and hurting people does not feel kind. And beneath all that suppression, beneath all that performance, beneath all that carefully maintained kindness, something dark has been accumulating. Something that has nowhere to go because you have sealed every exit in the name of being good. You remember the moments when you felt something other than kind. When resentment rose in your chest after giving to someone who never gave back. When anger burned through you after being taken for granted once again. When the bitterness crept in during the quiet moments when no one needed anything from you and you finally had space to feel what you had been avoiding. These feelings terrified you. Because they did not fit the story you told about yourself. Kind people do not feel resentment. Good people do not feel anger. Empaths do not feel bitterness toward the people they love. But Jung would tell you these feelings are not evidence that you are a bad person. They are evidence that you are a human being. A human being who has been giving too much for too long to people who have been taking too much without gratitude. Jung taught that what we cannot acknowledge in ourselves does not disappear. It goes underground. It lives in the shadow, that dark repository where we store everything we cannot face about ourselves. And the empath who cannot acknowledge their anger, their resentment, their exhaustion, their desperate desire to stop being so endlessly available, that empath has a shadow full of unexploded bombs. And eventually those bombs go off. Not always in dramatic explosions. Sometimes in the slow implosion of depression. Sometimes in the body that starts breaking down from the stress of constant suppression. Sometimes in the relationships that suddenly collapse under the weight of all the unsaid things. Sometimes in the quiet death of your own dreams because you spent every ounce of energy keeping everyone else alive. This is what Jung meant when he warned about the destruction that comes from unacknowledged shadow. You do not have to be cruel for your shadow to destroy you. You just have to keep pretending it does not exist. The empath who prides themselves on their kindness is often the empath with the fullest shadow. Because every time you chose to be kind instead of honest, something true went into that shadow. Every time you smiled when you wanted to cry, something real went underground. Every time you said it is okay when it was not okay at all, a piece of your authentic self got buried beneath the performance. And now you cannot find yourself anymore beneath all that kindness. You have become a person that everyone loves but nobody truly knows. Because the real you has not been available for a very long time. The real you has been locked away behind the performance of endless kindness, endlessly accommodating, endlessly available, endlessly good. Jung called this the inflation of the persona. When the mask becomes so dominant that the real person disappears behind it. When the performance is so convincing that even you forget you are performing. When being kind stops being something you choose and becomes something you compulsively maintain regardless of the cost. And the cost has been enormous. Look at what your kindness has cost you. The relationships you stayed in too long because leaving felt unkind. The opportunities you declined because pursuing them felt selfish. The dreams you abandoned because they took time away from people who needed you. The parts of yourself you shut down because they were inconvenient for the people around you. Your kindness has been the most expensive thing you own. And you have been paying for it with your life. Jung was brutal in his assessment of this dynamic because he understood that false kindness is not neutral. It is not simply less than ideal. It is actively destructive. To the empath who maintains it at the cost of their authentic self. And to the people around them who never get to meet the real person beneath the performance. Because your authentic self is not just kind. Your authentic self is complex, multidimensional, capable of anger and boundaries and honest disagreement, and the kind of truth that sometimes hurts before it heals. Your authentic self has edges, has limits, has needs, has the capacity to say this is not okay with calm certainty. But nobody has ever met that version of you. Because you buried it under kindness before anyone could reject it. You thought that if people saw the real you, the one with needs and limits, and the occasional flash of genuine anger, they would leave. That the only reason people stayed was because of how relentlessly kind you were. That without your kindness, you would be abandoned. But Jung understood the tragedy in this belief. Because the people who only stay because of your performance do not actually love you. They love the performance. They love how convenient you are. How easy. How endlessly giving. And you have been destroying yourself to maintain a relationship with people who do not even know you exist beneath the mask. This is the brutal truth Jung pointed to. Your kindness is not protecting you. It is hiding you. Not just from others. From yourself. You have been so busy being kind that you have forgotten who you are when you are not performing. What you want when you are not managing everyone else's needs. What you feel when you stop translating your authentic emotions into acceptable versions. The destruction Jung warned about is not dramatic. It is quiet. It is the slow erosion of self that happens when you give and give and give without ever receiving. When you are kind to everyone except yourself. When you protect everyone's feelings except your own. You wake up one day and realize you do not know what you enjoy anymore. What you believe anymore. What you want anymore. Because you have spent so long being shaped by other people's needs that your own shape has disappeared. That disappearance is the destruction. Not a sudden catastrophe. Just the quiet loss of yourself to a kindness that was never really kindness at all. It was fear. Wearing the most beautiful mask you could find. The moment you understand that your kindness has been fear in disguise, everything shifts. Not comfortably. Not gently. But with the kind of brutal clarity that Jung said was necessary for real growth. Because you cannot heal from something you have not named. And you have been calling fear by the wrong name your entire life. You called it kindness. You called it compassion. You called it being a good person. You built your entire identity around it. You wore it like armor against a world that felt unsafe. You offered it compulsively to people who did not deserve it, and withheld it from the one person who needed it most. Yourself. Jung understood that the most profound act of self-betrayal is not cruelty or negligence. It is the constant prioritization of other people's comfort over your own truth. The empath who is always kind, always accommodating, always available, is not a saint. They are someone who has learned that their own needs are dangerous. That their authentic emotions are unacceptable. That the only version of themselves worth showing the world is the one that never inconveniences anyone. And this learned belief is slowly killing them. You have spent years being kind to people who mistook your kindness for weakness. People who saw your endless accommodation and concluded you had no limits. People who interpreted your forgiveness as permission to repeat the same violations. People who understood that you would always find a way to make their behavior acceptable in your mind so you could continue being kind to them. These people did not respect your kindness. They exploited it. And the brutal truth Jung pointed to is this: people do not value what they never have to earn. When your kindness is automatic, when it flows regardless of how you are treated, when there is no condition under which you withdraw it, it becomes worthless to the people receiving it. Not because they are monsters, but because humans are wired to value what requires something of them. Your kindness required nothing of them, so it meant nothing to them. This is the part that wounds most deeply when you finally see it. You have been giving your most precious resource freely to people who never appreciated it. Pouring yourself into relationships that treated your generosity as a baseline expectation rather than a gift. Performing kindness for an audience that took you for granted and called it love. Jung taught that the shadow contains gold. Your shadow has been holding something you desperately need. The capacity to be unkind. Not cruel. Not vindictive. But genuinely, authentically, boundaried in a way that sometimes looks unkind to people who expected unlimited access to your warmth. The ability to say no without softening it into apology. The capacity to walk away without crafting an exit that protects everyone's feelings except yours. The power to be honest even when honesty is uncomfortable. The freedom to stop performing warmth for people who have done nothing to deserve it. These qualities live in your shadow because you were taught they were bad. That having them made you a bad person. That good people, kind people, empathetic people, do not feel these things. But Jung knew that what we reject in ourselves does not disappear. It accumulates. It builds pressure. It waits. And when it finally erupts, it erupts without the wisdom and discernment you would have if you had been integrating it all along. This is why empaths sometimes swing from endless giving to complete shutdown. From total availability to absolute withdrawal. From boundless kindness to what feels like cruelty. Not because they are unstable, but because they spent so long suppressing their authentic limits that when those limits finally assert themselves, they have no middle ground to land on. Jung called this the tension of the opposites. When you suppress one extreme, the other extreme gathers force in the dark. The empath who has suppressed every unkind impulse for years does not gently discover their boundaries. They slam into them. And the people around them, who thought the kindness was unconditional, are shocked by the sudden wall. But the wall was always coming. Jung warned about this. Every unacknowledged limit, every swallowed truth, every suppressed no, was a brick in that wall. And most empaths never see it coming until it is already built. The healing begins not by becoming kinder, but by becoming more honest. By learning to distinguish between kindness that flows from genuine love and kindness that flows from the fear of what will happen if you are not kind. By asking yourself, in every moment of giving, whether you are giving because you want to or because you are afraid of what happens if you do not. This distinction sounds simple. But for someone who has confused fear and kindness for their entire life, it is revolutionary. Because the moment you start asking this question, you start to see the truth. You see that most of your kindness is not really kindness at all. It is appeasement. It is preemptive management of other people's potential anger or disappointment. It is the constant, exhausting work of making sure everyone around you is comfortable enough not to threaten you. And you are exhausted. You have always been exhausted. Not because caring is tiring, but because fear is tiring. Because performing safety through endless accommodation requires every ounce of energy you have and leaves nothing for yourself. Jung believed that the privilege of a lifetime is becoming who you truly are. But you cannot become who you truly are while you are performing who everyone needs you to be. You cannot discover your authentic kindness while you are compulsively offering its counterfeit. You cannot find genuine generosity while fear is the engine driving every giving impulse. The transformation begins when you stop performing and start choosing. When kindness becomes something you deliberately offer to people who have earned it, not something you automatically extend to anyone who asks. When you can sit with someone's disappointment in you without rushing to fix it. When you can hear someone call you selfish for having a boundary and feel nothing but the quiet certainty that you have made the right choice. This is the kindness Jung would recognize as real. Not the fearful performance you have been maintaining, but the genuine, chosen, boundaried warmth of someone who knows their own worth and extends care from a place of strength rather than terror. And here is what you will discover when you make this shift. The people who only valued your fear-based kindness will leave. Because they were not there for you. They were there for the service you provided. The moment that service becomes conditional, the moment it requires something of them in return, they will disappear. Let them go. Their absence is information. It tells you what you always suspected but were too afraid to confirm. That some people in your life never loved you. They loved your availability, your accommodation, your endless, exhausting, self-destroying performance of kindness. But the people who remain when you stop performing, the ones who stay when your kindness becomes selective, the ones who respect you more when you say no, the ones who love you not because you are endlessly accommodating but because you are real. Those are the people who actually see you. Jung understood that real connection requires two real people. And you have not been real for a very long time. You have been a performance of kindness with a person somewhere underneath it that nobody, including yourself, has been allowed to fully meet. But you are tired of performing. You are tired of the exhaustion that comes from maintaining a mask that no longer fits the face beneath it. You are tired of being kind to people who take it for granted. You are tired of swallowing your truth to preserve other people's comfort. And this tiredness is not a weakness. It is a signal. Jung would say it is your authentic self finally making enough noise to be heard above the performance. It is the buried parts of you demanding to be integrated rather than suppressed. It is your shadow asking to be acknowledged rather than hidden. The brutal truth Jung pointed to is also the most liberating truth you will ever hear. Your kindness is destroying you because it is not kindness. It is fear. And the moment you understand this, you can begin to replace it with something real. Not hardness. Not cruelty. Not the abandonment of your empathy. But genuine, chosen, boundaried care that comes from a place of fullness rather than depletion. Kindness that costs you nothing because it flows from authentic love rather than the desperate need to be accepted. This is the kindness worth having. The kindness worth giving. The kindness that will not destroy you because it is finally, truly yours. Jung was brutal in his warning because the truth required brutality. You needed to hear it plainly. Without softening. Without the kind accommodation that has been your prison. Your kindness is destroying you. But it does not have to. The moment you choose truth over performance, the moment you honor your own limits as fiercely as you honor everyone else's feelings, the moment you stop being kind out of fear and start being real out of strength, that is the moment your kindness becomes something sacred. Something sustainable. Something that will never destroy you again.